Have you ever felt like your pain is invisible? Like nobody sees your struggle? And even when you try to explain it, people just don't understand. And you start to ask yourself if your life will ever change, or if this is all you will ever be. Stuck, tired, and slowly losing hope. Because that question, that quiet and heavy question inside your mind, is the same kind of question that once lived inside a man named Tyler Perry. And today, here on English to Inspire, we are going to walk together through his story, step by step, feeling every moment, understanding every decision. And if you want more stories that challenge your mind and push your life forward, take 1 second and subscribe, because this is not just a story about success. This is a story about survival, about pain, about responsibility, and about a man who had every reason to quit but decided to keep going. And maybe, just maybe, you will see yourself in his journey. Because right now, you might be dealing with your own battles. Maybe you feel lost. Maybe you feel tired. Maybe you are working hard and still not seeing results. And that hurts. That really hurts. But let me ask you something. What are you doing with your time? Are you using your pain as fuel, or are you using it as an excuse? Because there is a big difference, and this difference can change everything. Not tomorrow, not next week, but now. And Tyler Perry understood this in a very deep and painful way, because his life did not start with success. It did not start with opportunity. It did not start with support. It started with confusion, fear, and a kind of pain that most people cannot even imagine. And the truth is simple and hard at the same time. Nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is going to fix your life for you. And that might sound heavy, but it is also power. Because if nobody is coming, that means it is on you. It is your responsibility, your choices, your actions, and your future. And when you accept this, something changes inside you. Something wakes up. Something strong. And as we move deeper into this story, you will begin to understand how a boy, broken by his environment, slowly started to build a different path. Not because it was easy, but because he decided, again and again, to not stop, even when everything around him was telling him to give up. And that is where this story really begins, in a place of pain, in a place of silence, in a place where most people lose themselves, but where he started to find something else, something that would later become his greatest weapon. Tyler Perry was not born into comfort, and his early life was not filled with love and safety, but instead it was filled with fear, confusion, and a constant feeling of not being enough. Because as a child, he lived in an environment where pain was normal and where kindness was rare. And when you grow up like that, something starts to happen inside you. Something quiet, but very powerful. You begin to question your value. You begin to feel small. And you begin to believe that maybe this is all life has for you. And for Tyler, this feeling was not just in his mind. It was in his daily life. Because he suffered abuse, both physical and emotional. And when a child experiences that kind of pain, it does not just go away. It stays, it grows, and it follows you. And maybe you understand this more than you want to admit. Maybe you also have memories that still hurt when you think about them. Maybe you also carry words that someone said to you years ago. And even today, those words still have power. And this is the reality that Tyler had to face every single day. A reality where he did not feel safe, even in his own home. And that creates a deep loneliness. A kind of loneliness that is hard to explain, because you are surrounded by people, but you still feel completely alone. And when you are a child, you do not have the tools to deal with this. You do not know how to process the pain. You do not know how to escape. So, you just absorb everything. And slowly, it becomes part of you. And this is where many people break. This is where many people accept a life of limitation, because it feels impossible to imagine something different. But here's the truth that you need to hear. Your past is real. Your pain is real. But it does not have to be your future. And that is not easy to accept, because sometimes it feels like the past is too heavy, too strong, too present. But if you keep holding on to it without changing your direction, it will control your life forever. And Tyler Perry was standing right in the middle of this storm, feeling lost, feeling hurt, feeling like there was no way out. And yet, even in that darkness, there was something small starting to grow inside him. Something quiet, something almost invisible, but something that would soon become the beginning of a different path. Because even in the worst situations, there is always a moment, a small moment, where you can choose to see things differently. And for him, that moment started to appear in a very unexpected way, through something simple, but powerful. Something that did not remove his pain, but helped him face it, understand it, and slowly transform it into something else. At some point, when the pain becomes too heavy and the noise inside your mind does not stop, you either break completely or you find a way to release it. And for Tyler Perry, that release did not come from people. It did not come from support, and it did not come from a safe environment, because he did not have those things. It came from something simple and quiet, something that many people ignore, and that was writing. Because one day he started to put his thoughts on paper. And at first, it was not about success. It was not about money. It was not about becoming famous. It was just about survival. It was about taking all that pain, all those memories, all that confusion, and giving it a place to exist outside of his mind. And when you do that, something powerful starts to happen. Because your pain is no longer trapped inside you. It starts to move. It starts to change. And it starts to teach you things about yourself that you never understood before. And maybe right now you are holding everything inside. Maybe you do not talk about your struggles. Maybe you pretend that everything is fine. But inside you feel pressure building every single day. And that pressure does not disappear. It grows. It becomes heavier. And if you do not find a way to express it, it will control you. It will define your decisions. And it will slowly destroy your confidence. And Tyler understood this, even if he did not have the words to explain it at the time. Because when he wrote, he felt something different. He felt a small sense of control, a small sense of clarity. And that feeling became addictive, not in a negative way, but in a way that gave him hope. Because for the first time, he was not just reacting to life. He was creating something, even if it was just words on a page. And those words started to grow into stories. And those stories started to reflect real life, real pain, real struggles. The kind of struggles that many people experience, but do not talk about. And this is where something important begins to take shape. Because when you create from truth, people can feel it. Even if they do not see it yet, even if the world is not paying attention yet, the truth has power. And Tyler was slowly building that power without even realizing it. Because at that moment, he was not thinking about stages. He was not thinking about audiences. He was just trying to understand himself, trying to survive his own emotions. And that is something you need to think about right now. Are you running away from your pain, or are you facing it? Are you distracting yourself every day, or are you doing something that can transform your life? Because the truth is simple. Growth is uncomfortable. Change is painful, and facing yourself is one of the hardest things you will ever do. But it is also the most necessary. And as Tyler continued to write, something inside him became stronger, something that was preparing him for the next step, a step that would test him in ways he was not ready for, a step where reality would hit hard, and where most people would decide to stop. There comes a moment in every journey where your dream meets reality, and that moment is not soft. It is not kind, and it does not care about your feelings, because reality will test you in a direct and sometimes brutal way. And for Tyler Perry, that moment came when he decided to take his writing and turn it into something bigger, something real, something that people could see, feel, and experience. So he created his first stage play. He invested his time, his energy, and the little money he had, and he believed. He truly believed that people would come, that they would sit in the audience, that they would connect with his story, and that everything would start to change. But when the day arrived and the curtains opened, something painful happened. The seats were empty. Almost no one showed up. And the silence in that room was louder than any noise, because it was the sound of rejection, the sound of failure, the sound of a dream that was not working. And in that moment, many thoughts start to attack your mind. You start to question yourself. You start to doubt your abilities. You start to think, maybe this is not for me. Maybe I am not good enough. Maybe I should stop. And if you are honest with yourself, you have probably felt this before. Maybe not on a stage. Maybe not with an audience, but in your own life. When you tried something and it did not work. When you gave your best and still failed. And that feeling can break you if you let it. Because failure has a way of making things look final. It makes you feel like this is the end, like there is no way forward. And Tyler felt that weight, not just emotionally, but also financially. Because he lost money, he lost stability. And he was getting closer to a situation where survival itself would become a problem. And this is where the story becomes very real, because it is easy to talk about dreams when things are going well. But what do you do when everything is going wrong? What do you do when the results are not coming? When people are not supporting you? When the world seems to ignore your effort? Do you stop or do you continue? And let's be clear, continuing is not easy. It requires something deeper than motivation. It requires discipline. It requires belief. And it requires a decision that you repeat every single day, even when you do not feel like it. And Tyler Perry was standing right at that point, looking at his failure, feeling the pressure, and understanding that if he wanted a different result, he could not just wish for it. He had to face the pain, learn from it, and try again. Even if it meant risking more, even if it meant falling harder. And that is exactly where his life started to shift, into a place that most people are not willing to go. A place where comfort disappears and only determination remains. When life pushes you to the edge, when your money is gone, when your options are disappearing, and when your dream is still not working, you enter a space that very few people truly understand. A space where survival becomes your main focus. And for Tyler Perry, that space became his reality. Because after his early failures, he lost almost everything. And there were days when he did not have a stable place to sleep. Days when his car became his shelter. And nights where uncertainty was his only companion. And let's be honest, this is the point where most people stop. This is the point where people say it is enough. Where they choose safety over struggle. Where they decide that the dream is too expensive, too painful, too far away. And maybe you are at a smaller version of that point in your life right now. Maybe you are tired of trying. Maybe you are thinking about giving up. Maybe you are asking yourself if all this effort is really worth it. And those thoughts are normal. They are human, but they are also dangerous. Because if you accept them without resistance, they will define your future. And Tyler had those thoughts too. He felt the pressure. He felt the fear. He felt the temptation to quit. Because quitting would have been easier. Quitting would have removed the pain of failure. Quitting would have allowed him to return to something more predictable. But there was something inside him that refused to stop. Something that did not make logical sense. Something that went beyond comfort, beyond fear, beyond immediate results. And that something was his decision to believe in his own path. Even when there was no external proof. Even when nobody was clapping, even when nobody was watching. And this is a moment you need to pay attention to. Because belief is not something you feel only when things are good. Real belief shows up when everything is falling apart, when there is no guarantee, when the results are not visible, and that is when your character is tested. That is when your future is decided. Not in moments of comfort, but in moments of pressure. And Tyler kept going. He kept rewriting his plays. He kept improving his message. He kept trying to connect with people, even when his situation was unstable. And this is where discipline becomes more important than motivation. Because motivation comes and goes, but discipline stays. Discipline shows up, even when you do not feel ready, even when you are tired, even when you are scared. And that is what kept him moving forward. Step by step, decision by decision, and slowly. Without noise, without attention. He was getting closer to a turning point, a moment where all that pain, all that effort, and all that persistence would begin to create something different. Something that would finally start to open doors that once seemed completely closed. There is a moment in life when you stop waiting, when you stop blaming, when you stop hoping that someone will come and change everything for you, and instead, you make a decision, a real decision, not based on emotion, not based on comfort, but based on responsibility. And for Tyler Perry, that moment became a turning point, because after facing failure, rejection, and even homelessness, he realized something that many people spend years avoiding. He understood that if his life was going to change, it had to come from him, from his actions, from his discipline, from his willingness to continue when everything inside him was tired. And that realization is not easy, because it removes all excuses. It takes away the option to blame your past, your environment, or other people, and it places everything in your hands. And that can feel heavy, but it is also powerful, because when it is in your hands, it means you can do something about it. And Tyler started to approach his work differently. He did not just create, he studied, he observed, he paid attention to what people were feeling, what they were going through, and he began to shape his stories in a way that connected deeply with real life, especially with communities that felt ignored. And this was not an accident. This was intention. This was strategy. This was a man deciding to use his pain as a tool instead of a limitation. And you need to think about that for a moment. What are you doing with your experiences? Are you letting them control you, or are you using them to build something? Because the difference between those two paths is everything. And Tyler chose to build, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it required more effort, even when the results were still uncertain. And he kept producing his plays, again and again, improving them, adjusting them, taking feedback. And slowly, something started to change. Not in a loud way, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet and consistent way. People started to show up. Small audiences at first, then a little more. And with each performance, the connection grew stronger, because authenticity has a way of reaching people, especially when it comes from real pain and real truth. And this is where momentum begins, not with a big explosion, but with small steps repeated over time. And Tyler stayed focused on those steps. He stayed committed to his path, and he continued to move forward, even without guarantees. And as this momentum grew, something unexpected started to take shape, something that would change not only his career, but also his identity, something that would connect him to millions of people in a way he never imagined. And it all started with a character that came from a very real place, a character that would soon become impossible to ignore. As Tyler Perry continued to work, to improve, and to connect with his audience, something very interesting began to happen, because he stopped trying to be what he thought people wanted, and instead, he started to express something real, something honest, something that came directly from his experiences and from the people around him. And this is where one of the most important moments in his journey was born. The creation of Madea, a character that at first might seem simple or even funny on the surface, but that carries a deep truth, a strong voice, and a powerful connection with real-life struggles. Because Madea was not just entertainment. Madea was a reflection of strength, of resilience, of tough love, the kind of voice that tells you the truth even when it hurts, the kind of presence that does not allow excuses. And people felt that. They recognized it. They saw themselves in it. Because many people grow up with figures like that. Strong personalities that speak directly, that challenge you, that push you to be better. And Tyler understood that this character was more than just a role. It was a bridge, a way to communicate real messages in a way that people could accept, laugh at, and still learn from. And this is a powerful lesson for you, because sometimes you are trying too hard to fit into a mold. Trying too hard to be accepted, trying too hard to follow what others are doing, when the real power comes from being authentic, from embracing your story, your voice, your perspective, even if it feels different, even if it feels uncomfortable, because that is where your uniqueness lives, And that is what people connect with. Not perfection, not imitation, but truth. And Tyler leaned into that truth. He built his performances around it. He allowed Madea to speak in a way that was bold, honest, and sometimes even uncomfortable, but always real. And the audience responded, not slowly this time, but with energy, with excitement, with loyalty. Because when people feel understood, they stay, they support, they come back. And that is exactly what started to happen. His shows began to fill up. The laughter became louder. The connection became deeper. And for the first time, he was not just surviving. He was building something that had real impact. Something that was growing beyond his expectations. And this growth was not luck. It was the result of years of pain, years of effort, years of not giving up when it would have been easier to stop. And now, the world was starting to notice. Slowly at first, but with increasing attention. Because when something is real, when something is built on truth and consistency, it becomes hard to ignore. And Tyler Perry was stepping into a new phase of his life, a phase where his voice would reach further, his message would grow stronger, and the doors that were once closed would begin to open in ways that would change everything. As the audience grew and the connection became stronger, Tyler Perry started to experience something that once felt impossible. He started to be seen, not just by small groups in theaters, but by a much larger world that was finally paying attention. And this moment did not come suddenly. It was built step by step, show by show, decision by decision. And now the results were beginning to show in a more visible way, because his plays were no longer small or unknown. They were attracting crowds. They were generating income. And more importantly, they were creating impact. People were talking, people were sharing, people were bringing others. And that is how momentum grows. Not just through effort, but through connection, through something real that people want to experience and share with others. And Tyler understood that this was an opportunity, not a moment to relax, not a moment to slow down, but a moment to push even harder, to expand, to take his message beyond the stage. And this is where he made another important move. He transitioned into film, and this was not a safe decision, because the film industry is competitive, expensive, and full of gatekeepers. People who decide who gets a chance and who does not. And for someone with his background, without traditional support, this could have been another point of rejection, another moment of failure. But Tyler did not wait for permission. He did not sit in hope that someone would open the door for him. He created his own door. He invested in his own projects. He believed in his audience. And he took the risk. And this is something you need to understand clearly. Opportunities do not always come to you. Sometimes you have to build them. Sometimes you have to create something from nothing, even when the path is not clear, even when the outcome is uncertain. And that is exactly what he did. His films started to reach people in a bigger way. And once again, the authenticity of his work made the difference. Because he was not trying to copy what was already successful. He was telling stories that reflected real experiences, real emotions, real struggles. And the audience responded, because people are always looking for something that feels true, something that speaks to them, something that understands them. And Tyler was delivering that consistently. And as his films gained attention, the industry could no longer ignore him. The same world that once did not see him was now watching, now recognizing, now opening doors that were once closed. And this is how things begin to shift. Not because the world suddenly becomes kind, but because your persistence becomes impossible to ignore. And Tyler Perry was now stepping into a space where his influence would grow even more, where his decisions would become bigger, and where his vision would expand beyond anything he had imagined in those early days of struggle. And this expansion was leading him towards something much greater than personal success. It was leading him toward ownership, toward control, toward building something that would last far beyond a single moment of recognition. As Tyler Perry moved forward, growing his presence in film and expanding his audience, he began to understand something that many people only realize too late. And that is the difference between temporary success and true ownership. Because it is one thing to be seen. It is one thing to make money. But it is a completely different thing to control what you create, to own your work, to decide your direction. And Tyler did not want to depend on a system that once ignored him. He did not want to ask for permission, and he did not want to lose control of his voice. So he made a bold decision. A decision that required vision, courage, and a deep belief in himself. He decided to build his own studio. And this was not a small step. This was massive. This was the kind of move that changes everything. Because building a studio means creating opportunities not only for yourself, but for many other people. It means building a space where stories can be told without limitations, where creativity is not controlled by fear or by external approval. And this is exactly what he did. He created one of the largest film studios in the United States, a place where he could produce, direct, write, and distribute his own content. And this level of control gave him power, not just financial power, but creative power. The ability to stay true to his message. The ability to continue telling stories that matter. And this is something you need to reflect on in your own life. Maybe you are not building a studio. Maybe your goals are different. But the principle is the same. Are you building something that you control? Or are you always depending on others to move forward? Because dependence limits you. It slows you down. It places your future in someone else's hands. And that is a dangerous place to be. And Tyler refused to stay there. He chose ownership. He chose responsibility. And he chose to think long-term. Even when it required more effort, more risk, and more patience. And this is why his success is not just about talent. It is about strategy. It is about decisions made under pressure. It is about staying focused when distractions appear. And as his empire grew, as his influence expanded, and as his name became stronger, he never forgot where he came from. He never disconnected from the pain that shaped him, because that pain was not just part of his past. It was part of his fuel, part of his message, part of his purpose. And now, standing in a position that once felt impossible, he had something important to say. Not just to entertain, not just to inspire, but to challenge, to wake people up, to make them see that their current situation does not have to define their entire life. And that message, that final truth, is what brings us to the most important part of this entire journey. Now let me ask you something again, and this time I want you to really think about it. Not quickly, not on the surface, but deeply. What are you going to do with your pain? What are you going to do with your time? And what are you going to do with the life that is in your hands right now? Because after everything you have just heard, after walking through the journey of Tyler Perry, from a child surrounded by fear, to a man who built his own empire, the truth becomes very clear. Your situation may be hard, your past may be heavy, and your present may feel uncertain, but none of that removes your responsibility to act. None of that gives you permission to stay stuck. And that might sound tough, but it is also the most honest and powerful message you can receive. Because when you accept responsibility, you take back control. And when you take back control, you give yourself a real chance to change your life. Not in theory, not in dreams, but in reality. Step by step, decision by decision. And Tyler Perry did not wait for the perfect moment. He did not wait for approval, and he did not wait for his fear to disappear. He moved forward with fear. He worked through pain, and he stayed consistent when it would have been easier to stop. And that is the level you need to reach, not tomorrow, not someday, but now. Because the clock is moving. Every single day is passing, and the question is simple. Are you moving with it, or are you standing still? Are you building something, or are you just thinking about it? Are you taking action, or are you making excuses? Because excuses are comfortable. Excuses are easy, but they will keep you exactly where you are. And if you are tired of your current situation, if you are tired of feeling stuck, then something has to change. And that change starts with you, with your habits, with your focus, with your willingness to do what is necessary even when you do not feel like it. And yes, it will be uncomfortable. Yes, it will be difficult. But that is the price of growth. That is the cost of becoming something more. And the truth is, you are capable of more than you are showing right now. But potential means nothing without action. Potential means nothing without discipline. So make a decision. A real decision. Draw a line in your life and say, this is where things change. This is where I stop waiting. This is where I start building. Because the world is waiting for you. Opportunities are waiting for you. And your future is waiting for you. But it will not wait forever. So move, act, and prove to yourself that your story is not finished. It is just beginning. And what you do next will define everything that comes after.